Hey folks, figured I'd give y'all a glimpse as to what's going on with the Star Wars playthroughs, what we have so far, and what's coming in the future. What we're looking at here is a legend for our markings of ships on a workshop. Quite obvious, a ship that's built and released. Mid stage can represent something that's already established as far as I'm fine with the aesthetic of it, the shaping of it, and then from there we're just in the staging of getting the devices rounded out and moving on to finishing it up. Now, early stage could be maybe I'm working on an early form. I may or may not be satisfied with it. I might scrap it. Early stage could also be a build that I've relatively completed before, but for one reason or another has moved into obsolescence, mainly due to like Reforged Eden's introduction to shield parts. So it could be something that I need to gut and overhaul in order to make it relevant to current game stage. All right, so without further ado, we have a lot to cover. Let's get at it. So starting out, we have our look at SV. So we're looking at the starter. These two are already released. The TIE Enforcer and the A-Wing Interceptor. Both coming in at standard cost here. We're looking at just carbon, iron, copper, and silicon. Same thing here. Now, so the comparisons here aren't going to be apples to apples. So there's going to be some variance in potential as far as upgradability, performance, and things like that. So relatively in the same ballpark. I guess we could just look at like the compartment space and stuff. So yeah, so they do have like separate compartments and stuff for placing of additional devices. Right. So upgrades, all upgrade potential weapons and stuff like that. A little lighter here on the A-Wing. There's not really any turrets. Yeah, so that's just kind of a quick overview of there. Now, medium fighter, we do have the Actus 2 that's already released. I haven't really established anything as far as like what would be contemporary to that. Possibly I could do like some sort of other TIE variant, like a TIE Avenger, or maybe come up with my own inspiration in that, kind of like how I did with the Enforcer here. So maybe generate my own form that's of the essence of the TIE series to fill that out. So medium fighter, that would be like a kind of like a core 4 range. Maybe 4 to 6 guns, something like that. A shield with some shield extender placement. May or may not have warp drive. So that's what I'm thinking in that regards. So that's what Actus 2 is. It has a compartment here. You could potentially get a warp drive, some shields, or whatever you want to go. You can define a role. It could be like a long range reconnaissance or short range interceptor or something to that effect. Then we have moving forward the heavy attack. So probably would sacrifice some mobility here for like as far as strafe and lifts, dorsal. That may not be robust. What may be here is just like forward and some reverse with a high attack profile as far as like weapons loadout and stuff like that. This would be two ideal candidates I'm thinking of. Now here the Y-Wing is an older build. It was built before the shield system, shield extender system for Reforged Eden, so I'd have to look at overhauling some of the device placement, thrusters and stuff like that. That could be optimized with some of the bigger three by whatever thruster configuration that would help out with thrust. Do have space for a jump drive, CPU and stuff like that. Again, this is an older build, so I'm not decided if I'd want to go on this or if I'd want to go on the or go with the I forget the term for the Y-Wing, but if you're familiar with like some of the animated series, you have the Y-Wing. It doesn't have like the exposed components and stuff like that. It has like an interior exterior shell. Now, if I were to do that, that would give me more internal space to work with. I could fill it out with more devices, components, and stuff to make it a more efficient build. So same thing here with the uh, quote-unquote TIE bomber. I guess we're calling it right now. Not so much on the maneuverability that you might see in like the Enforcer when it's fully upgraded. We do have some of that thruster suite here, but for the most part, some things I'd like to work on would, at least give some strafe. But I don't know if there's going to be real estate for it. But we will be able to house some additional weapons, more of a robust shield system if you want to do that. So, yeah, so more of an attack profile here, maybe not so much as an agility fighter, but it should be that option there, so look forward to that. Now, moving on, we do have the patrol vessel and gunship role. This would be, so think of like a maxed out SV with all the shield components. Easily can run a progenitor shield, a good number of guns. In the case of the Rebel Alliance, the Stag, it has quite a number of turret placements and turret potential there. So with the TIE variant, I guess it's kind of based off of a Sith Fury. I'm kind of using that for inspiration here. So this might not feature as many turrets. Again here, we're not necessarily going to be apples to apples with the comparisons here, but should be heavy on the guns. It's a smaller profile, so maybe you won't have the turret displacement that you'd have on Stag featured on the Imperial version, but with the smaller profile, you might be able to work some more blind spots and mitigate some damage that you could receive that way. So right now the interior is it's not too big. Now, I would like to push out and put in some RP elements a little bit, some compartments, some rooms and stuff like that, to kind of give a presence of a patrol vessel, something like you might see on the actual Sith Fury, the rooms and compartments and stuff. So I should be able to push out the thrusters a little bit more. There's some work here, so I could sneak in some rooms, some RP element and stuff like that. Stag already established, that's on the workshop. So this here formula stages, maybe, I don't know, maybe I won't be happy with it. Maybe I'll move on, but so far it seems okay. Just want to disrupt some of these side angles and stuff. Seems to be alright so far. So that's the SVs. And so let's move on and take a look at what we have for HVs. So these are already out, the 78Z speeder bikes, relatively cheap starter, kind of like a motorbike replacement. So pretty cheap. Got a GAD under it, some function, fridge, and a little bit of space there, some expandability. The Induced speeder, yes, that's out already. So we're looking at just a simple speeder as far as like harvester stuff like that. Can be modded a little bit. It's really a compact form, good for fitting on some smaller CVs or on a bigger CV. It will blend in, won't take up too much space if you need that for something else. So looking here at the Bantha pod, this is more of a utility build. It's kind of like a cargo pod as well, but you've got a number of functions here. It's upgradable as well. You could add shields, various number of things. You get space for harvester drills, salvage drills. This is vertical mount for harvester drill if you want to vertically mine down. That's always helpful. Again, a number of upgrade points. So now with this, it's something that's designed to work with the Stag system, like it would attach under the wings here. So that's one thing. But also, if I do ever have plans of like making a GR-75, which is like a cargo transport, the Rebel Alliance used those. It's maybe I could have spacing to fit these in there, and so that kind of look organic with that. Yeah. So I don't really have any ideas for a tank yet, or if I'd want to necessarily emulate something out of the Star Wars universe. Um, Now, would it be something that might be used for both factions? I'm not sure. I may end up generating one form, or I might just, possibly do one for each faction. So I don't necessarily want to go too far past that. Generally, HVs don't see a lot of use, like tanks and stuff like that. People tend to use the SVs or CVs to get the jobs done. So we're moving on here to CVs. We're going to be taking a look at first our starters. A couple things to note here is, so we have the Gozanti. This would be the Imperial starter. Now, this is a older build, the CR70. However, with the internal spacing here, there's not really enough to fulfill to my needs what I would want in a starter. It's really cramped. This was more of like a pursuit of a aesthetic, something to more emulate what the form of the actual thing is, rather than implementing some more functionality. But I think we could get that here. So with this kind of like my custom take on the CR90 series. So something that could actually work. Now, so for example, taking this here, you can't really. There's not a whole lot to do. I mean, I guess you could go all advanced thrusters on these, but that would be ridiculous. So I might grind it out, give it a little more function, see what I can squeeze into it. But it's kind of cramped. So we'll see what happens. Like, it's setting up the devices here, it's really asking for a chain detonation. There just isn't the real estate, and back here in the engineering section, it's really cramped. So same thing, it's a gasoline tank waiting to explode. I might be able to fight against that, put in enough time to mitigate a lot of the things. Probably wouldn't see some of the medium shield parts, but possibly some of the whole suite of smalls, maybe a couple mediums, one or two, but really hard pressed to get the space in here. And there's not, if for a starter, and there's no farm. That's the thing. So it'd be a hard fight to get a farm. It might be possible. There might be some space here to get a 9 plot or something like that. So I haven't completely given up on it, but a safe alternative is this one here. So before we take a closer look at that, let's double back to the Gozanti here. So starter, but obviously avoid the influence of the weapons and the advanced thrusters and stuff like that. So a lot of times with my builds, I'll explore what the upgrade potential is, just fleshing things out to see as far as weapons and thrusters and stuff like that, where it could potentially end up. So it's pretty robust as far as like the upgrade potential. Now, got a little entrance to a hangar here. And so we should fit, so what is this? So this is what, 4 here on either side. And then, so this section here, this could be dedicated to farms, or this area could double up as additional shield placement. So I think it was the 8 mediums you might be able to fit in there. I gotta double check on that. But yeah, 8 mediums to get your upgrades for generators here on the ceiling. You want to do that. Currently, right now, I have 3 systems. So ammunition, container, so that's about 280. I'll probably push that up to 320. So it could potentially be 320 systems, 320 systems. Probably have one as a harvest. In case maybe mid or late game, this could end up being converted to a harvester. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, starter. Pretty long for a starter. That may impede the cost, so I'll see what I can do about it. So I'd like to get it down to a starter cost. It just depends on how the weight plays out. Right, so the Rebel Alliance, this is what they would potentially get as a starter. So kind of like somewhat close to the Gazanti numbers here. So we have our spacing here for the shields. Turn on some lights, that might help. There we go. Right. So, full medical suite here with fast access to deployment ramp. Drone hatch. It's going to be a thing. So, again, here we have our placement for shields. We've got, what, 4 here. I'm not sure. I think I had space for others as well in the back. I think that's what I was working on as I was provisioning placement for the additional shields. 18 grow plot. So space back here should... I want to have like a walk-in engineering room where you could potentially touch all thrusters if you want to upgrade or replace them, repair them, and stuff like that. So maybe a full-form engineering room. Yeah, so absolutely, I think we should be able to fit in some additional medium-sized shields. So you should be able to stretch out the longevity of the starter, stretch it out pretty far. Gun count, not sure on that. I don't remember. I guess I'm still working through that. So I may or may not stay with this form here as far as the frontal bridge. I might break from that and do some sort of hammerhead form, more so than what's prolific here with the Corellian Corvettes. Maybe it might stretch out a little bit more. I'm not sure on that yet, so still kind of playing with that. So this is the CR70, and this is the CR90. So this is closer to what you would see in the original trilogy. It's the first ship that appears on film. So kind of the same thing here. You know, this was these two were worked on to be closer to more of a replica inspiration as far as the form goes. So maybe not as efficient as functionality, but here there's a little more space to work with, so might be able to make this more of a sensible starter than the CR70. Both of these are older builds, so you just have to ignore some of the work in progress here. We got a little bit of farm here. We've got some 18 grow plots. Engineering is a little more spacious, so I might be able to round out more of a solid build on this one. Yeah, I definitely, you know, this one and this one, these two are definitely gonna make it as the starters. This for Rebel Alliance, this for Galactic Empire. Certainly I'd like to get these two at some point since they're just more, you know, they're closer to the actual form, so I'll try and get out as much functionality as I can out of them. Probably won't be as efficient as either one of these as far as like the upgrade potential, but you know, there'll be people that are nostalgic for that sort of thing. So that's our starter CVs. Now moving on to our frigates. So these are like mid-game spawn, end up late, and with some modability, could drag into in-game a little bit. Certainly with the retribution, there's that potential there. Throwing on a bastion shield in either one of these, that'll definitely help stretch it out. So this is already on the workshop, the retribution. Now, the Nebulan B, this is going to be the next CV to hit the workshop from me. So, vertical build, which is present with its challenges. That's been part of the time sink. Also, this was built before the shield extension system. So, was that Reforged 1.4 or something to the effect? I can't remember. Yeah, simple access. We got a little bit of RP going on. A little bit like of a conference room here or something. Some RP elements to squeeze in. Now it's gonna be heavily leaning towards the weapon mounts, player weapon mounts. The turret suite won't be as prolific as say its Imperial counterpart. Um, Probably 30, potentially 30, like 24 to 30 as far as like the turret mounts. Now weapons you can get 2 systems of 12 for the player mounts, player weapon mounts. So that could be any number of things. Be lasers, artillery, or whatever. That'll be your call. So still doing a little bit of block work, but for the most part, that's done. Now this one will feature spacing for. So we can do advanced generators here, or for Reforge, and all these can be taken out and slot in a fusion reactor. So the front end here, this could be utilized. So this could be like 36 grow plots, or if you wanted to up armor the area, you could just fill this in with additional armor blocks or decoys. So that's an option. Down here, so that's the fusion reactor house. Now we do have space for a large shield part. So if you want to do a combination of, say, a fusion reactor and a large array, a large capacitor array, then that could work as the fusion reactor works as a shield charger. It has some shield innate or shield recharge innate values. So that could be a scheme there. And so this is our CPU. I think it was Core 21. That was the last mathematical number I was looking at here as far as like combination, placing them down these hallways. So Core 21. And I think that should be sufficient to fulfill anything that you could cram onto the ship. Now, I guess you could always, if you need more, you would be able to take out these bars here and drop some additional CPU in if you wanted to do that. So, hangar here, it's workable. It's not the biggest hangar. You can fit a number of like Actus 2s or A-Wings in here. You could even, if you want to use it as a Galactic Empire build, then you could fit in some TIE Enforcers. That fits in here as well. So, still working on a number of things here as far as like textures and stuff like that. That's pretty much the main thing now. Is I'm good with the block work. It's essentially just a texture run and gun here. Do some QC stuff as far as like checking the roll, pitch, and yaw, and making sure that it's equalized and stuff like that. So, but for the most part, it's there as a build, getting close to completion. So that should be hitting a workshop soon. So these would be both like mid to late game, potentially stretching it out to in game in some situations, either as a primary attacker or as a support craft. So as far as the size of this build, this one's actually pretty good in regards to size class. That's at a 6 right now, and that's not going to grow too much. Alright, so moving on, we're looking at our heavy cruisers. Adjudicator and its sister ship Ashfall. This is already established on the workshop, so take a look at that if you want to know more. Shield, let's see, shield extenders here. It's a 886 configuration, but there is space in the front here for if anybody wants to do an 8-8 configuration, I'm sorry, 4-4 configuration, that's possible. You just have to remove these 4s. Now, I'll do an update video about that later, because some people really they really want to run their uh, side or their 4x4 with the large shield parts. You know, some of us are more adapt to like a 6-2 configuration, 6 capacity. I'm sorry, 4 capacity and 2 recharge for a higher total. But that's not for everybody. So there is that. There is the spacing in the front booms. If you don't want to commit it to up armoring, then so just a quick look at it. If you wanted to do that, start at the space here, one space from the stairs, and you would just remove down till you get to the X's. Okay, that's a little much. So that's it. So you would stop here. Same thing like if you're up armoring, like some of the these half blocks and thin blocks, these would need to be removed. And then you run that and yeah, just slide it in. Do that on both sides and that'll give you a 4x4 configuration for the large shield parts. So that's the Imperials. Now we're looking at the Rebel Alliance. This, again here, this is a build that was done some time ago before the shield system, so the interior would have to be reworked. Still, it wasn't done with the outside. This is a Mon Calamari design, so anybody that's well-versed in the lore of Star Wars should recognize this aesthetic. It should be somewhat noticeable. Now, so it's kind of based on like a an MC-40, which is a light calamari cruiser. Not necessarily the stuff you see in the original trilogy or some of the extended stuff. It exists in like some of the earlier LucasArts games, like TIE Fighter. That makes a presence there. It does, with some of the extended lore, it does make a presence. So, again here, this is an older build. It has to be overhauled. But there is the real estate here to make it a competent fighter. So it should end up being a relative equivalent to the Judicator Ashfall system. So, a lot of potential here. I had the nose is committed to farms, but this could be changed to slot in armor, or I guess it could be moddable for either one. Some people like their farms on warships. Those people exist. But yeah, so this could be our counterpart to the Ashfall and Judicator here. Decent hangar size. Get this flying hangar here. Probably end up reinforcing it with some blast doors for those that would be interested in shutting it. Now, yeah, we should be able to fit in all the shield parts, I'm sure. As far as like the large shields, I'm not sure what the count would be. Those are still some big devices, and also there's the fact that I would want to fit in some number of fusion reactors, so we'll see what that is. So these ships, for all intents and purposes, they should be designed to handle late game and in game content. Again, with the Judicator, it's moddable with the armor and stuff like that. You could add additional armor in the nose to help mitigate against shield stripping enemies that you face. Not much else to say, so we're going to try and adhere to that with the Sovereignty as well, the Rebel Alliance counterpart. So, moving on, we do have our Quasar 2, which is a carrier cruiser based on the Quasar from extended lore. So, I wanted a ship that could operate as a carrier, but if you wanted to, you could convert it to a standard warship, something comparable to like a light cruiser. The front of it, the bridge here, this would be armored, or is armored, but it's got a number of Xeno or combat steel. I will have a protected bridge in the back, but for all intents and purposes, it's up to you how you want to define the role. Um, so as a carrier, it should be able to house 3 Helios-sized modules, which I plan to make my own run of like Imperial or Rebel Alliance form of the Helios scale modules, since that's already an established popular scaling dimension with the module system. So I figured I'd just stay with it. So I could go 3. This would be 1. This is parking for another. And originally I had it here, but I decided to, or that I'm going to put the module system here, so that way, if you have a one of the modules that you frequently use, it would be best and easiest just to park that here, which would give you a fast access to the bridge. So only makes sense that way. So as a carrier configuration, it's got quite a large deck that's being worked on here, so it should fit a good number of vehicles. Now, if you wanted to have it stand in as a warship, now when I think of that, I think of like a role. Okay, it could be, it's your carrier, right? You park it at the sign and you go off and ride off and do what you got to with your warship. So I'm thinking like, so what happens if you run into a situation where you lose that primary warship? Like, maybe you get disconnected or something like that, come back and you find that your ship is blown up, but maybe it's recoverable and you don't have a second backup. So this could potentially be that. So, maybe it's your carrier, but you'll have the potential, like, to throw on some weapons and some shields and go rescue salvage that your primary warship. So that's the kind of scenario I think of. Or you could, if you wanted to, in game, like drone space or something like that. This could be a good miner. That's what I'm thinking about in a multi-role. So like these dashes, these are weapon mounts. So that's a relatively decent mining spread, mining laser spread, and forward cockpit to give you a nice panorama here to see what you're looking at as far as mining. So there's that. Currently with the suite running the guns like that, it's over 60 turrets, counting the cheeks and stuff like that. Maximum size hangar doors. It's going to be pretty big as far as the hangar spacing too. All shield parts. These will all be mountable in addition to 3 fusion reactors. So the target I'm looking at here is like a 1.8 million spawn in. 2.1 at the heaviest. So it will be spawning in light. It's not going to have 60 turrets or all these advanced drives or anything like that. You'll add those on as you upgrade. And then you'll be able to define the number of extensions that you want. I'll have a number on board already, but then you'll be able to expand that to your heart's desire. This is what all this spacing is. Here we have solar, but I'm going to push this closer to the edge of the wings. So that way to open up more expansion for storage. So this is the central section here. This is going to change since I'm not going to be having this as parking. This will be the parking for the third module. So I'll have this blend a little better into the fuselage with some sort of ramp going up. But what I'm looking at here for this section is, I know some people don't like to have onboard grow plots and stuff like that on their carriers, but I'll leave that open as an option. Maybe it'll be like a run of 36. No, not something tragically overdoing it, since you don't want to consume all your CPU on a carrier and save that for the module system. But I'll leave that open, or maybe it would be kind of like a multi-role thing here. You could go farms. Maybe you want to go additional storage. Or maybe you would want to go armor. Because following that, this may be the CPU section here. I do plan on implementing a protected bridge if you end up having to fulfill a light cruiser role. So I'm not quite decided on that. Might have it asymmetrical, like maybe that combat bridge would be here, or potentially I'll just fit it in here. That might make the most sense, since that's more of a central placing. Yeah, not much else to be said about it. Lots of shield potential, and gonna be a lot of thrusters. Yeah, that's the Quasar. So moving on, we're going to be looking at our... So these are our Dreadnought-Carriers, right? So we have another Mon Calamari design in the work here. And we also have, for the Galactic Empire, a Acclamator 2. So when I think Dreadnought-Carrier, what I'm thinking here is, like, if we take the heavy cruiser role, its combat potential for in-game and stuff like that. And then we also give it some sort of carrying capacity. So, kind of like a one-stop shop vehicle. So if we're looking at, for example, here, the Mon Calamari design, so a good bit of internal space. We can see Stag can easily go in through that. Park somewhere back here, number of fighters. And then I'll probably set aside spacing here on either side to connect some of the Helios scale modules. Probably one on either side. Wouldn't want to overdo it. Now, so that would be like fulfilling a carrying capacity role. Now, in addition to that, it would also be a very robust and powerful warship. So I would think of, like, so this no section here, perhaps up to this run, like this would either be hollow or it might be established armor already. I may just leave it open and then let you guys decide on what you want to do with that. Maybe you'd want to block it out for additional armor and decoys, or maybe perhaps here again farms, or it might end up being stretched out to additional cargo space or hangars. But so that'll be moddable. Yeah, good number of thrusters on this. That'll be optional. I don't know if that's going to be necessary to move this thing, but for those that would end up filling it up with the Helios modules that are fully loaded and loading up the cargo bays and stuff like that, that sort of thrust might be necessary. So it would be again, it would be an open role, kind of like what we got here with the Quasar. Ideally, it would be set out to be a warship, but with some considerable carrying capacity. You know, be it vehicles, modules, or just cargo. So you can think of it like the inverse, like this with the Quasar system. That's more of a primary carrier and can potentially secondarily be a warship of some description. So kind of like the inverse here with this. They're primarily a warship, but to some extent can fulfill a carrier. So that's the same thing with the Acclamator here. So again, it's going to have an internal fly-in hangar. And you'll be able to dock inside. So, like, for example, here we have a Helios, and you know, as you can see, that can easily go out. These platforms are designed to house Gozantes, so you could park those there. Very spacious, a lot of hangar potential here, carrying potential. Yeah, so going to be very robust as far as like a combatant too. What would be the Greebling here? This is big enough to house turrets, so you can imagine like these side cheeks filled out with turrets, and then these terraces up here. It's quite robust. Now, will you have the CPU to spin all that on? I'm not sure, unless you're running on a server that's unlimited. So yeah, so that's our Dreadnought-Carriers class. So then last but not least is our Star Destroyer, which is going to be absolutely ridiculous as far as size classes. If I put this out, it might just be as a museum or like a showpiece. Because good luck spawning it in. Size class is going to be very substantial. So what I'm working with here for the edges, that these are Reforged Eden ramps. So this has been on hold for a long time. Now, I've been kind of plucking away at Elion and suggesting, and hopefully, they've taken notice since they started introducing new blocks and stuff like that. So one of my requests I've been hammering them with is like an 11 1/4 degree block, which would be half of our current 22.5. So if that could fit in, then it's like the floodgates will open with what's possible for shaping. Like, as far as like an Imperial aesthetic, and not only that, but if there's a good suite of interconnecting blocks, then that'll help with the macro scale of rounding as well. So, yeah, very big right now. So, size class 28, and it's hollow on the inside, essentially. A lot of that has to do with the ramp blocks. These count as devices and not as blocks. So that makes the size class skyrocket. Yeah, a lot of a lot of hangar space. So much hangar space. So for as an example, you see that little speck back there? That's a fusion reactor. So yeah. Six hangars. So I've checked this area back here, like the bridge. You can actually fit a CV in here. A good number of CVs, possibly. Yeah. So very big bridge. So oh my goodness, it's just massive. And then also, could it be practical? Some servers it can be with like the editing the CPU values or maybe turning them off or weights and volumes off. Then yeah, that could work. Now, I've entertained the thought of if we could make it practical in standard servers, then maybe the thrust would just be overwhelmingly forward thrust, and then maybe like one or two drives and drive thrusters in any of the other directions, and then it would actually handle like a Star Destroyer. So at that point, maybe people would understand. But yeah, it's this big thing, man. It would need a lot of drive thrust to push it. So that could make it possible as if the strafe thrust and reverse and lift thrust, if those were just kind of sacrificed to allow the forward thrust, then that may be viable, but people would have to have the understanding that they're not going to have a fighter, right? It's not going to be an X-wing comparable as far as like agility and stuff like that. And some people they go looking for that in their big warship CVs, but here, if we were to make this a realistic thing, then that certainly wouldn't be the case with it. So yeah, just kind of a quick overview of what's coming and what's planned and stuff like that. Now, there are a couple outlier vehicles that I've worked on and maybe put on hold, some various CVs or SVs or stuff like that. But for the most part, these are kind of locked in. I'm happy with these forms, and they should all pretty much fulfill a a full playthrough in any number of degrees as far as stages and stuff like that. Early, mid, and late game. We'll fulfill some roles like the Quasar could work as a miner, very big miner. So, but it could be that some of the modules that connect to it, those could be the individual miners. So, yeah, pretty robust. I can't think of like if I'm missing anything, any sort of niche that some of y'all might see in a full playthrough. Now, if you could think of some things, and leave some comments below, what could be missing from this playthrough. So, I'd be interesting to read up on that and see what some of your suggestions are. So. All right. That's a lot of block work on those big ships, those big 4 ships. Now, the Quasar shouldn't be that time consuming since there's not a lot of ship there. But if we're looking at the big Mon Calamari design here, the Acclimator, they're kind of going to be a pain. But then again, a lot of the spacing is going to be relegated to hangar space. So. These are bigger size ships, but at the same time, like they're hollow, so that's gonna help work in its favor. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, just an overview of what we got going on, what's planned, what's already established. So, any questions, comments? Leave them in the comments below. Like, what are your thoughts on this playthrough? Do you feel that this would fulfill everything that you look for in a full playthrough from start to finish? Let me know. Catch y'all later. Till then, LyfeForce out. Hello, folks. If you enjoy my content, if you enjoy my builds, please consider becoming a patron today. As a patron, you get access to custom builds of release works, early access to some builds before they hit the workshop, exclusive builds. You also gain access to direct feedback and engagement through polls, idea suggestions regarding builds before and after workshop release. If this interests you, please check out the pinned comment below. Thank you.